February 8th, 1944, 07:43 hours, Anzio beachhead, Italy. Unteroffizier Klaus Müller of the 3rd Panzergrenadier Division watched an old Italian farmer emerge from a bombed farmhouse carrying a hoe. The man looked 70, maybe older, back bent from decades working these fields. His clothes were patched and repatched, pre-war vintage, the kind of stubborn old fool who'd farmed through artillery barrages. 2 Germans from the 2nd Company walked past. The farmer looked up, gave them a tired wave with soil-caked fingers. They nodded back, one calling out, "Buongiorno, nonno." The farmer returned to his hoeing, working along what appeared to be old irrigation ditches filled with shell fragments and debris. What Müller didn't know was that the farmer was counting. Machine gun nest in the ruined stable 30 meters north, mortar position behind the stone wall, patrol pattern every 18 minutes, guard change at 0800, 1200, 1600 and 2000 hours. Artillery spotters rotating every 2 hours, always approaching from the east. Because the farmer wasn't Italian, he wasn't 70. He was 28-year-old Sergeant Thomas George Prince, serial number B72426 of the 1st Special Service Force, the unit German intelligence had labelled Die Schwarzen Teufel, the Black Devils. Right now, wearing clothes pulled from a dead Italian's closet and carrying a hoe from a collapsed barn, Prince was executing one of the most audacious reconnaissance operations of the Italian campaign. Underneath the dirt he was working, 1,400 meters of Allied telephone wire lay severed by a German mortar round. Without that wire, Prince couldn't relay the enemy positions he was observing. Allied soldiers were dying blind. When Tommy Prince was 5 years old, on a September morning in 1920, a black Ford Model T arrived at the Broken Head Ojibwe Nation Reserve, 46 miles northeast of Winnipeg. Inside were 2 Indian agents carrying government papers. The Indian Act was clear. Indigenous children must attend residential school. His mother, Arabella, had hidden Tommy in the root cellar. His father, Henry, stood in the doorway. "He's too young," Henry said. "The law says 5 years old. Don't make this difficult." They found Tommy within minutes. As they carried him to the car, Arabella ran after them, speaking rapidly in Ojibwe. The last words he heard were, "Kichimanidor, gi nagadawendamin." The Great Spirit watches over you. At Elkhorn Industrial School, they cut his hair within an hour of arrival. Speaking Ojibwe earned 10 strikes with a leather strap. They assigned him a number, 4571. For 11 years, that number mattered more than his name. The school's motto, displayed in foot-high letters, "Kill the Indian, save the man." But Prince found one refuge. "As soon as I put on my uniform," he would tell a reporter decades later, "I felt a better man. I even tried to wear it in the classroom." The cadet uniform meant he was more than just another Indian to be civilized. He was a soldier. What the residential school never understood was that they couldn't destroy what his grandfather had taught him before they took him. How to track a deer through snow without leaving footprints. How to remain motionless for hours, heart rate slowing until you became part of the forest. How to move through brush so quietly that birds didn't stop singing. The Ojibwe didn't hunt for sport, they hunted for survival. Every skill had been refined over centuries. The school called these skills primitive. They would become the deadliest abilities in the Allied arsenal. June 3rd, 1940, Winnipeg Recruitment Office. Prince stood before Sergeant Major William Patterson. Height, 5 feet 8 inches. Weight, 140 pounds. Race, Patterson looked up. "Never mind, I can see what you are." He wrote Native Indian on the form, then added, Primitive type, but eager. "We're not taking Indians. Try the Americans." Prince returned the next week, and the next. On his fourth attempt, with France fallen and Britain standing alone, they were desperate enough, but not for combat units. Prince was accepted as a sapper in the Royal Canadian Engineers, manual labour, digging latrines. At Camp Shiloh, Manitoba, the white soldiers had a dozen names for him: Chief, Tonto, Geronimo. They'd make war whoops when he walked by. One corporal, drunk after leave, tried to pull Prince's hair to see if it was real Indian hair. Prince broke his wrist in 2 places. Until he hit the rifle range. Prince put every round through the bullseye at 300 yards, then apologized for the 2 shots that hit the outer ring. Wind had shifted. The joking stopped. Something else started. Fear. October 1942. The Americans and Canadians were forming the 1st Special Service Force for operations behind enemy lines. Probable casualty rate, 70%. Prince volunteered immediately. Fort Harrison, Montana, December 1942. The training was designed by sadists. 20-mile runs through snow in full gear, hand-to-hand combat where broken bones meant you were learning, mountain warfare in blizzards. Of 2,300 volunteers, 800 quit in the first month. Prince thrived. During escape and evasion training, they released him in the Montana wilderness with orders to reach a checkpoint 40 miles away. Search teams with dogs would hunt him. Prince arrived in 18 hours. The dogs never caught his scent. He'd covered his tracks using techniques his grandfather taught him for avoiding rival hunting parties. In the killing house, where they practiced silent elimination, Prince demonstrated something that made hardened instructors step back: the Ojibwe method. Approach from the 17-degree blind spot in peripheral vision, move when the target exhales, strike the vagus nerve cluster below the ear, then the blade between the 3rd and 4th cervical vertebrae. Death in 1.3 seconds. No sound. "Jesus Christ," Master Sergeant Wilson said. "Where'd you learn that?" "Hunting moose, sir. Same principle, different anatomy." The force developed their own mythology. They attacked at night, faces blackened with boot polish. They'd leave calling cards on German corpses. Germans started finding sentries dead at dawn, cigarettes between their lips, looking alive from a distance. The Black Devils were born. Back at Anzio, Prince had located the wire break but couldn't just kneel and fix it. Too obvious. He worked for 40 minutes establishing a pattern. Hoe the ground, pull a weed, clear debris, move 3 steps, repeat. German snipers were watching through scopes. One wrong move meant a Mauser round through the skull. Then, groaning like his back hurt, and after 11 hours of observation it actually did, he knelt, slowly. "Was machst du da, Alter?" "What are you doing there, old man?" A Wehrmacht Lieutenant stood 10 feet away, hand resting on his Luger P08. Young, maybe 23. Iron Cross First Class. He'd seen combat. His eyes were intelligent, suspicious. Prince had a Fairbairn Sykes fighting knife under his shirt. From this position he could draw and throw in 1.2 seconds. The lieutenant would be dead before reaching his pistol, but the body would be discovered within minutes. Instead, Prince stood slowly, deliberately favouring his right knee. He looked at the German with exhausted eyes, gestured at the field, then his stomach. Then, in inspired battlefield theatre, he shook his fist at both German and Allied lines, launching into what he hoped sounded like Italian profanity. "Maledetti tedeschi! Maledetti americani!" The lieutenant's suspicion melted. He laughed, pulled out Coca-Cola chocolate and tossed it over. "Here, Alter, buona fortuna." Good luck. While tying his bootlace, Prince had found the severed wire ends underground, stripped insulation with his thumbnail and twisted the copper together. The wire was live. Within minutes, he was transmitting coordinates. 4 German artillery batteries were destroyed by sunset, but he had to maintain cover. Day 2, February 9th. Prince emerged at 07:52, later than yesterday. Patterns got you killed. This time he worked a different field section, one that gave him observation of a relocated 88mm gun. At 08:19, a German supply truck arrived. Prince counted 12 ammunition boxes while struggling with a route. Then, disaster. A Hauptmann was walking directly toward him with 2 soldiers, not passing by, approaching with purpose. The captain stopped 3 feet away. Du bist jeden Tag hier. You're here every day. Prince shrugged, pointed to the farmhouse, then his stomach, made eating gestures. The German studied him. Prince let his hands tremble slightly, coughed wetly, pointed to his chest, coughed again. The captain's expression shifted. He handed Prince canned meat. As they walked away, one soldier said, konnte ein Spion sein. He could be a spy. The captain responded, Ein Spion? Der alte Mann kann kaum laufen. A spy? The old man can barely walk. They laughed. Day 3, February 10th. Prince knew this was pushing luck beyond reason, but German intelligence units were moving something big at night. Officers he didn't recognize were surveying positions. At 08:42, he saw 3 officers with maps marking unit designations. Critical intelligence. Then, the unthinkable. A German soldier walking straight toward his hidden telephone wire, 20 meters away. Prince collapsed. He fell forward dramatically, clutching his chest, gasping. German soldiers rushed over. For 3 agonizing minutes, Prince performed a heart attack while a medic checked his pulse, said something about irregular rhythmus. Finally, Prince recovered. An 18-year-old soldier actually helped him to the farmhouse, supporting his arm. At the door, the young German said, Krieg ist bald vorbei, Großvater. The war will be over soon, grandfather. Prince patted the boy's shoulder, watched him walk back to his unit, then got on the field telephone and called in an artillery strike that would kill most of them within the hour. When Prince reported to Lieutenant Colonel Gilday on February 11th, the commander was stunned. The Italian farmer we kept seeing. That was you? Yes, sir. You maintained cover for 72 hours in direct view of enemy positions. Yes, sir. Christ, Prince, if they caught you in civilian clothes, you'd have been executed as a spy. No Geneva Convention. They would have tortured you first. They didn't catch me, sir. How many enemy KIA from your intelligence? Artillery confirms approximately 200, sir. 200 Germans dead because an Indian savage pretended to be a farmer. September 1st, 1944, southern France, near L'Escarène, disaster struck. 800 Germans had vanished into the maritime Alps. Without their location, the Allied advance would hit a trap. Prince and Private Ballantyne volunteered for the impossible. 70 kilometers behind enemy lines. No radio, just ammunition and 3 days of rations. They moved at night using game trails Prince identified by moonlight. During daylight, they hid in caves, once spending 6 hours in a crevice while Germans rested 20 feet away. By day 3, they were out of water and food. At 0600, Prince spotted smoke. Through binoculars, 800 men, 40 vehicles, 12 artillery pieces. The missing battalion. But this intelligence was worthless unless it reached headquarters. The return would take 3 days. By then, allies would be slaughtered. Prince made a decision that should have killed him. "I'm running it back," he told Ballantyne. "That's 70 kilometers through enemy territory, in daylight. Hide here, I'll bring the force." Prince stripped everything non-essential, then started running. Not jogging, running. When German patrols appeared, he didn't hide. He charged through them, using shock and speed. A motorcycle unit chased him for 3 kilometers before he lost them in a vineyard. At kilometer 30, his feet were bleeding through his boots. At kilometer 50, his vision was blurring from dehydration. His body was consuming its own muscles for fuel. But Prince had learned at residential school that the body could take infinitely more punishment than the mind believed. Pain was just information. You could choose to ignore it. After 14 hours of continuous running, he reached Allied lines and collapsed. The medics tried to stretcher him out. Prince grabbed the intelligence officer. 800 Germans, grid 247-831. Artillery here, here, here. He drew positions in the dirt with a bloody finger. "Get me water. I'm leading you back." He drank 4 canteens, ate 2 chocolate bars, had his feet taped, then led the strike force back 70 more kilometers. They attacked at dawn. 1,000 prisoners captured. 0 Allied casualties. February 12, 1945. Buckingham Palace. King George VI personally pinned the military medal and silver star to Prince's chest. The king's handshake was firm despite a slight tremor. "Sergeant Prince, your actions in Italy were extraordinary." "Just doing my duty, Your Majesty." Prince was one of only 59 Canadians to receive the Silver Star. Only 3 of those also held the military medal. 11 medals total across 2 wars. The most decorated indigenous soldier in North American history. While Prince stood before the King of England, his people couldn't vote in Canada, couldn't leave reserves without permission, were legally classified as wards of the state, equivalent to children. After the war, the betrayal became complete. The Veterans Land Act promised soldiers $6,000 in loans and grants for land and equipment. Indigenous veterans were offered $2,320, and only if they used it on reserve land their band already owned. Any equipment purchased remained under Indian agent control for 10 years. The alternative was enfranchisement, legally ceasing to be Indian. Give up your status, your treaty rights, your connection to your community, and you could be treated equally. Prince sat in the Winnipeg Veterans Affairs office looking at the forms. The clerk, who'd spent the war counting supplies, explained with bureaucratic indifference. "So if I remain Indian, I get less than half." "That's correct. Even though I have the same medals. The Indian Act supersedes the Veterans Act." Prince thought about the German officer who'd given him chocolate, the young soldier who'd helped him walk, the captain who'd handed him meat. Enemy soldiers had shown him more respect than his own government. He chose to remain Ojibwe. Canada chose to punish him for it. Prince found work as a janitor at Winnipeg Health Sciences Centre. $1.25 an hour. The man who'd killed more enemy soldiers than any other Canadian Indigenous serviceman mopped floors while his combat injuries worsened. His knee, shattered by shrapnel in Korea, deteriorated. Veterans Affairs demanded Indigenous veterans prove they were financially responsible enough for medical care. The operational stress injuries were worse than physical wounds. Every German he'd killed visited nightly, the sentry at Monte Cassino, the young soldier at Anzio who'd helped him. Did the artillery get him? Prince's hands shook constantly. The bottle stopped them shaking. Whiskey made the ghosts blurry, less insistent. But alcohol is a liar's medicine. It promises peace, delivers destruction. When Korea erupted in 1950, Prince re-enlisted at 34. The Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry needed experienced NCOs. They didn't care that he was indigenous. April 24th, 1951. Hill 677, Kap'yong Valley. 50,000 Chinese attacked. 700 Canadians stood between them and Seoul. When Chinese soldiers got within grenade range, Prince stood fully exposed, firing his Bren gun from the hip. Shrapnel tore through his right knee. He tied a tourniquet around his thigh and kept fighting for 2 days. The PPCLI received the only US presidential citation ever awarded to a Canadian unit. By October 1953, Prince couldn't soldier anymore. Medical discharge. He returned to a country that still treated him as subhuman. By the 1960s, alcohol had taken everything. Prince lived in the Winnipeg Salvation Army shelter on Henry Avenue. Other residents knew him as the quiet Indian who trembled and sometimes cried out in German, Korean, Ojibwe. Nobody knew he was Canada's most decorated indigenous soldier. His family, facing poverty, was forced to auction his medals. Veterans groups and Aboriginal organizations pooled $75,000 to buy them back. The medals went to a museum, while Prince continued living in a shelter. November 25, 1977. Prince died at Deer Lodge Veterans Hospital. Official cause, complications from alcohol-related illness. Real cause, 32 years of systematic racism, denied benefits, and untreated trauma. His funeral drew 500 mourners. The Lieutenant Governor of Manitoba attended. American, French, and Italian consuls paid respects. The Princess Patricias provided full military honours. 21 guns fired into the Winnipeg sky. The country that abandoned him in life wrapped itself in his glory in death. The German soldiers at Anzio, men he was sent to kill, had treated him with more humanity than Canada ever did. They gave him chocolate and meat, called him grandfather, wished him luck after the war. They saw a man. Canada saw an Indian. That's all it ever saw. Today there are statues, schools named after him, a stamp with his image. The military tells his story at recruitment events, using words like courage and sacrifice. They leave out the parts about dying homeless, about $6,000 versus $2,320, about proving you're financially responsible enough for medical care you earned with blood. In the forests around Brokenhead, Ojibwe hunters still teach the old ways: patience, observation, becoming invisible. The same skills Tommy Prince used to become Der Geist, the ghost who haunted German nightmares. But they teach another lesson too. Sometimes the greatest enemy isn't the one shooting at you. Sometimes it's the nation whose flag you carry. The 18-year-old German who helped Prince to the farmhouse, who called him grandfather, who said the war would end soon, he showed more compassion in that moment than the Veterans Affairs clerk who denied medical care to a man with 11 medals. Enemy soldiers recognized his humanity. His own country never did. Sergeant Thomas George Prince, 11 medals for extraordinary courage, the most decorated indigenous soldier in North American history, died homeless while those medals sat polished in a case. Canada got exactly what it paid for, $2,320 worth of humanity for a man worth infinitely more. If Tommy Prince's story moves you, share it. Subscribe for more untold stories of those who served but were never served by their country. Comment below. Does your family have Indigenous veterans? What stories remain untold? These forgotten heroes deserve more than monuments. They deserve truth. And the truth is this: Tommy Prince fooled the Wehrmacht for 3 days dressed as a farmer. He couldn't fool the bottle for 30 years. The man who saved hundreds of Allied lives couldn't save himself from a country that valued his service but never valued him. Remember their names, demand their justice, because medals don't erase betrayal. Only truth honors the dead.